I watched my husband carry poison to my lips that morning, and I smiled. Not because I'm crazy, not because I wanted to die, but because 3 days earlier, I'd installed hidden cameras in every corner of our kitchen, and I'd watched him, my husband of 8 years, the man who whispered, "You're my world," every anniversary, grind my mother's heart medication into powder at 2 a.m. He thought I was asleep. He thought I was stupid. He was wrong on both counts. The morning it happened, I was dressed in my best Armani suit, charcoal gray, the one that made me look like I could buy and sell you twice over. Because today, I was closing the deal of my life. $50 million for the tech startup I'd built from nothing while Gavin played golf and pretended to network. The contract was on my desk downtown, one signature away from making me richer than God. But Gavin was in the kitchen, and his hands were shaking as he held out that green smoothie. "Babe, you need your strength today," he said. And oh God, his voice cracked. His eyes were wet. If I didn't know better, I'd think he was about to cry. But I did know better. I'd seen him Googling undetectable poisons in autopsy on the library computer 4 days ago. Yes, I followed him there, because when your husband starts taking mysterious midnight drives, you become a detective real fast. I'd seen the search history he thought he'd erased. Digoxin overdose symptoms, life insurance payout after sudden death. How long until poison takes effect? My blood had gone cold then. Now it was ice in my veins, sharp and clear and ready. I took the glass from his trembling hands. The smoothie was too thick, too green, and when I brought it close to my face, I smelled it. Metallic, chemical, wrong. There was a fine white powder clinging to the rim that he'd missed in his panic. Sloppy. Gavin was always sloppy when he was desperate. I met his eyes, watched him watching me, and I took the glass to my lips. I let him see me tilt it back. I let him think he'd won, but I didn't swallow. I held the liquid in my mouth, bitter and burning, and when I turned to grab my briefcase, I spit everything into the cloth napkin on the counter, every single drop. Then I did something that would change everything. I sealed that napkin in a Ziploc bag and dropped it in my purse, and I took the glass with me. Because if my husband wanted to kill me for $50 million and a life insurance payout, well, I was about to teach him a lesson about greed. When I walked into my office an hour later, Sasha was already at her desk. My secretary, 26 years old, legs for days, and an ego the size of Manhattan. She looked up at me with those cold blue eyes, and I swear to God, she smirked. She actually smirked at me in my own company. See, I'd known about the affair for 6 weeks. Hotel receipts Gavin forgot to hide, perfume that wasn't mine on his collar, the way she said his name with too much familiarity when she thought I wasn't listening. But I'd kept quiet. I'd played the oblivious wife because I needed to know how deep this went. Turns out, it went all the way to murder. "Good morning, Mrs. Pierce," Sasha purred, eyeing my suit like she was already planning what she'd wear to my funeral. "A big day today, isn't it? Gavin texted me, he mentioned, you're closing the sale." Oh, she was bold. She wanted me to know. She wanted me to feel small. Instead, I smiled and held out the glass, still half full of that poisoned green sludge. "Sasha, honey, Gavin made me this protein smoothie this morning, but I'm too nervous to drink it all. You know how he is with his special recipes." I pushed it across her desk, watching her face carefully. "He said it's his favorite blend, the one he makes for the people he loves most." Her eyes lit up. God, the ego on this woman. She reached for that glass like it was a gift from heaven, like drinking it would prove she'd won, that Gavin loved her more, that she was special. "Oh, this," she laughed, loud and sharp. "He makes this for me all the time. It's our thing." She grabbed the glass, tilted her head back, and drank it down in 3 long gulps, her throat working, her eyes locked on mine in challenge. "He's so thoughtful, isn't he? Always taking care of me." I counted to 60 in my head. That's how long it took for her face to change. First, confusion, a wrinkle between her eyebrows, then discomfort, her hand went to her stomach. Then panic, her pupils dilated, her skin went gray, and she tried to stand but her legs buckled. She hit the floor hard, her body convulsing, foam gathering at the corners of her mouth, and she made this sound, this horrible, wet, choking sound that I'll hear for the rest of my life. That's when Gavin burst through my office door. Not walked, burst. He was supposed to find me dead at home, I realize now. He was supposed to call 911, play the devastated husband, and collect his $50 million. But I'd thrown off his timeline by going to work. And now he was here, wild-eyed and sweating, and he froze when he saw Sasha on the ground instead of me standing over her. His face went through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, horror, confusion, rage, and then, the moment I'll treasure forever, understanding. He understood exactly what I'd done. "What did you do?" he screamed, falling to his knees beside Sasha, trying to turn her on her side as she seized. Oh God, what did you do? You killed her! You psycho bitch! You killed her!" I pulled out my phone, already recording, my hands steady as a surgeon's. "No, Gavin," I said softly, clearly, for the camera. "I didn't kill anyone. I just refused to drink the smoothie you poisoned this morning. The smoothie you made with my mother's digoxin tablets. The smoothie you intended to kill me with so you could inherit my company and pay off your gambling debts." I watched him freeze, watched his brain trying to calculate if I was bluffing. "Sasha drank it because she trusted you, because she thought you loved her, because you're both greedy, stupid, and now she's dying from your recipe." His mouth opened, closed, opened again, and in that moment, in his silence, I knew I had him. I knew I'd won. But the real question, the one that's going to keep you here for the next 45 minutes, is this. How did an underpaid receptionist and a gambling-addicted husband think they could steal $50 million from a woman who built an empire from nothing? And more importantly, how did I make sure they both paid for every single second they plotted my death? Because this is just the beginning. Let me tell you how I married a ghost. Not literally, though God knows. By the end, I wished Gavin had been dead instead of just empty. We met at a charity gala 9 years ago. He was charming, devastatingly handsome in his tailored Tom Ford suit, and he had this laugh, deep and warm, that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He worked in a private equity, he said. He drove a Tesla, he vacationed in Santorini, and me. I was 23, fresh off my first successful app launch, hungry to prove I wasn't just another tech bro with daddy's money. When Gavin looked at me like I was the sun itself, I believed him. I believed everything. The money was always mine, my company, my ideas, my 16-hour days and sleepless nights coding until my eyes bled. Gavin supported me, sure. He'd bring me coffee at 3 a.m., rub my shoulders, tell investors I was the real deal at networking events. But his own career, it was smoke and mirrors. Consulting gigs that never materialized, deals in the pipeline that fell through. By year 3 of our marriage, I was paying for everything. The mortgage on our Tribeca brownstone, his car lease, his country club membership, even his mother's assisted living facility upstate. I didn't mind. I loved him. I thought we were a team. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Gavin had a second life. While I was building my empire, he was burning through cash like it was oxygen. Sports betting, mostly. At first it was small. 100 here, 200 there on college football games. Then it escalated. 10,000 on a boxing match. 50,000 on the Super Bowl. By the time I found out, he was into an underground bookie for $370,000. Men with dead eyes and cruel smiles were calling our house at 2 a.m. Men who didn't take, "I'll get it next week," for an answer. I discovered the debts by accident 6 weeks ago. I was looking for our tax documents in Gavin's office. He kept everything locked in his desk, said it was organized that way, but the drawer jammed, and when I forced it open, papers spilled everywhere, betting slips, screenshots of gambling apps showing 6-figure losses, and then, at the bottom, a handwritten note on lined paper. Final payment due 11:30 or we take collateral. Your wife's company, her legs, your choice. I stood there for 20 minutes, just holding that note, my brain refusing to process what it meant. Collateral. My legs. They were going to hurt me to collect on Gavin's debt. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to my husband, this man I'd built a life with, and watched him breathe, and I thought, he knows. He knows they threatened me, and he hasn't told me. He hasn't protected me. He's been sneaking out at night, taking mysterious calls, and now I understood why. He wasn't fixing this. He was looking for an exit, and that's when the math clicked into place. Cold and brutal. My life insurance policy was $10 million, with Gavin as the sole beneficiary. The sale of my company was closing in 2 weeks for $50 million. If I died before signing that contract, the company stayed in my estate, which meant Gavin, as my husband, would control everything. No prenup could touch life insurance. No lawyer could stop him from liquidating assets to pay his debts and pocket the rest. I was worth more dead than alive, and Gavin, my husband, my partner, the man who whispered "forever" on our wedding night, had done the math. That's when I installed the cameras. Not because I wanted to catch him cheating with Sasha. I already knew about that. And honestly, the affair was the least of my problems. No, I needed evidence. I needed to see what he was planning, because a man $300,000 in debt with a wife worth $60 million, that man becomes dangerous. So I hid tiny wireless cameras in the kitchen, the bedroom, his office. I tracked his phone. I followed him to the library where he used public computers to search for poisons, thinking he was being smart, thinking he'd covered his tracks. And then, 3 nights ago, I watched him grind up my mother's heart medication at 2 a.m., digoxin, 30 pills, crushed into powder, stored in a vitamin capsule hidden behind the baking soda. I watched him test the dose on our neighbor's dog. Yes, he poisoned Mrs. Chen's terrier, and when it died 2 days later, he smiled. He actually smiled because he knew it worked. He knew the amount. He knew that in a woman my size, that dose would cause cardiac arrest within an hour, and the medical examiner would chalk it up to undiagnosed heart condition. Stress from the business sale. Tragic. Sudden. Convenient. I should have gone to the police right then. I should have shown them the footage, the search history, everything. But here's the thing about being a woman in tech, about clawing your way to the top when everyone expects you to fail. You learn that the system doesn't always protect you. You learn that sometimes you have to protect yourself. So I made a different choice. I decided to let Gavin make his move. I decided to hand him the rope and watch him hang himself with it. And that morning, when he gave me that poisoned smoothie with tears in his eyes, I knew exactly what I had to do. Because Gavin wasn't the only one who could play chess. He'd just been playing against a grandmaster the whole time. They say women have intuition, but that's bullshit. What we have is pattern recognition. What we have is a lifetime of being told we're crazy or paranoid when we notice the tiny inconsistencies in a man's story, the way his voice changes when he lies, the way he suddenly passwords protects his phone after 5 years of leaving it face up on the counter, the way he kisses your forehead instead of your lips because guilt tastes bitter and he doesn't want you close enough to smell it on his breath. We're not psychic. We're just paying attention while everyone else tells us we're imagining things. I started paying attention 3 months ago. It was small at first. Gavin coming home at 10 p.m. instead of 6, smelling like hotel soap instead of his office, text messages he'd tilt away from me at dinner, a new habit of showering the moment he walked through the door, like he was washing away evidence. When I asked him about it, he had an answer for everything. Late meeting with a client. Just went to the gym. Can't a man take a shower without an interrogation? And every time, he'd flip it back on me, make me feel guilty for asking, make me feel like the problem was my suspicion, not his behavior. That's the playbook, isn't it? Make her doubt herself so she stops asking questions. But I'm not wired to stop asking questions. That's how I built a $50 million company, by noticing what didn't add up, by pulling threads until the whole sweater unraveled. So I started documenting. Screenshots of his calendar that didn't match where he said he'd been. Credit card charges at restaurants I'd never heard of. Hotel rooms booked under his name in Manhattan when we lived 20 minutes away. And then, the big one. A charge for $2,400 at Cartier on a Tuesday afternoon. I never got a gift that week. I never got a gift at all. Sasha got a tennis bracelet. I saw it on her wrist 2 days later, glittering under the fluorescent lights of my office. She'd turned her hand just so, making sure I noticed, and when our eyes met, she smiled. Not a friendly smile. a victor's smile. The kind that says, I'm taking everything you love, and there's nothing you can do about it. I wanted to rip that bracelet off her arm. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled back and complimented her on it. Gorgeous piece. Sasha, someone special must really adore you. She blushed, actually blushed, and said, Oh, you know, just a little appreciation for all my hard work. Hard work, right? The only thing she was working hard on was my husband. The real shift happened 3 weeks before he tried to kill me. I came home early from a conference in Boston, my flight got moved up, and the house was dark except for the light in the garage. That was strange. Gavin never went to the garage. He complained about how cold it was out there, how the smell of motor oil gave him a headache. But at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, there he was, hunched over the workbench with his phone flashlight, doing something I couldn't quite see from the doorway. I watched him for maybe 90 seconds. He was focused, muttering to himself, and when he finally stood up, he was holding a pill bottle, one of my mother's prescriptions that she kept in the upstairs bathroom cabinet. My mother lives with us, has for 2 years, ever since her stroke left her needing daily care. She's 74, sharp as a tack mentally, but physically fragile. She takes 6 medications a day to keep her heart steady, her blood pressure stable. And Gavin, my husband, the man who promised to love and protect my family, was in the garage at midnight, doing something with her heart medication. I didn't confront him. Some instinct told me to stay silent, to stay hidden. I backed away, went upstairs, pretended I'd just gotten home. When he came to bed an hour later, smelling like garage dust and nervous sweat, I asked him how his night was. Fine, he said. Just couldn't sleep. Watched some TV. Another lie. Another thread. The next morning, I checked my mother's medication. The digoxin bottle, the one for her heart arrhythmia, was lighter than it should have been. I counted the pills. There should have been 43 left based on her dosage schedule. There were 31, 12 pills, gone. I stood in that bathroom, holding that amber bottle, and my hands started shaking so hard I had to sit down on the edge of the tub. 12 pills. Enough to kill someone my size 3 times over if crushed and concentrated. Enough to cause sudden cardiac arrest that would look natural, expected even, in a high-stress executive closing a major deal. That's when I knew, not suspected. Knew. My husband was planning to murder me. I could have confronted him right then, could have screamed, thrown the bottle at his head, called the police. But here's what I'd learned in 9 years of marriage to Gavin Pierce. He was a talker, a charmer, a man who could spin a story so convincing, you'd apologize for doubting him even when you'd caught him red-handed. If I went to the police with a half-empty pill bottle and a hunch, he'd say Mom miscounted, or I was paranoid from work stress, or, the classic, I was mentally unstable and lashing out at him because of our marital problems. He'd weaponize my ambition against me, paint me as the crazy career woman who couldn't handle success and a marriage simultaneously. And worst of all, people would believe him, because Gavin was likable. Gavin was the victim of the demanding wife who never had time for him. So I made a different plan. I'd let him think he was in control. I'd let him make his move, and I'd document every single second of it. I installed the cameras that weekend while he was at the gym, or wherever he really went when he said he was at the gym. 6 cameras total, 2 in the kitchen, 1 in the bedroom, 1 in his office, 1 in the garage, 1 in the hallway. Tiny things, no bigger than a button, wireless, uploading directly to a cloud server only I could access. I also cloned his phone. Took me 20 minutes with an app I'd built back in my early coding days. Suddenly, every text he sent, every call he made, every Google search, I saw it all in real time. And oh, the things I saw. Texts to Sasha about how it'll all be over soon, and how they'd finally be together. A Google search for how to act devastated at a funeral. A calculation on his notes app. 10 manor insurance. So 50 manors company sale. 370K debt. $59.63. He'd even subtracted the debt. He'd already spent the money in his head, already buried me and moved on. There was a Zillow search in there too. A penthouse in Miami, $8.9 million, beachfront. He'd favorited it. He was planning his next life while plotting the end of mine. The worst part, I still loved him. Some pathetic, stubborn part of me still remembered the man he'd been 9 years ago. The man who'd held my hand during my first investor pitch and whispered, "You're going to change the world." I mourned that man, but that man was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. What was left was a desperate, greedy shell wearing my husband's face. So when Gavin walked into our kitchen that final morning, hands shaking as he held out that poisoned smoothie, I wasn't afraid. I was ready, because I'd spent 3 weeks watching him plot my death, and I'd learned something important. The best way to catch a killer is to let him think he's already won. The drive to my office that morning felt like traveling through a dream, or maybe a nightmare where everything looks normal, but you know something's terribly wrong. I had a Ziploc bag in my purse with a poisoned napkin. I had a glass of toxic smoothie in my cup holder, sloshing slightly every time I hit a pothole on Fifth Avenue. And I had a recording device in my jacket pocket, already running, already capturing everything. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside I was screaming. Because I'd just escaped my own murder by maybe 30 seconds of quick thinking, and now I was driving into Manhattan traffic like it was any other Tuesday. The sun was too bright, the world was too normal. Didn't anyone else know that I'd almost died this morning? Didn't the universe care that my husband had just tried to poison me? But I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. I had one shot at this, one chance to flip the script and make Gavin pay for what he'd tried to do. If I went to the police now, with just the video footage and the smoothie, a good lawyer could argue reasonable doubt. He made his wife a health drink. Your Honor, maybe he grabbed the wrong supplement. Maybe the cameras are doctored. Maybe she's a scorned woman trying to frame her husband after discovering his affair. No, I needed a confession. I needed him to reveal himself in a way that was undeniable, permanent, recorded, and that meant using Sasha. I parked in the underground garage and sat there for a moment, staring at that glass of green poison in my cup holder. It looked so innocent, just a smoothie, maybe a little too thick, maybe with a weird smell, but nothing that screamed murder weapon. That's what made it so terrifying, how easy it had been for Gavin to almost kill me. How close I'd come to drinking it just to make him happy, just to avoid conflict on the biggest day of my career. I thought about all the women who wouldn't have noticed the powder on the rim, who wouldn't have had cameras installed, who would have trusted their husbands right up until their hearts stopped beating. How many times had this happened? How many sudden cardiac events and were actually murders disguised as medical emergencies? I grabbed the glass, my purse, my briefcase, and I walked into my building like I owned it. Because I did. Pierce Tech Solutions occupied the entire 14th floor of a midtown high-rise, all glass walls and modern furniture, and that tech startup aesthetic that screamed, "We're changing the world." 43 employees, most of them brilliant engineers and designers I'd personally recruited. And then there was Sasha, my secretary, the only person I'd hired because Gavin insisted she was efficient and professional, and came a highly recommended. I should have known then. Men don't recommend women for jobs based on their typing speed. Sasha was at her desk in the reception area, and the moment I walked in, I felt it. That shift in the air, that electricity that crackles when two predators recognize each other. She looked up from her computer, and her eyes traveled over me slowly, assessing. She was wearing a tight red dress, the kind you don't wear to file paperwork, and her hair was down in perfect waves that probably took an hour to style. She looked like she was dressed for a celebration. Maybe she was. Maybe Gavin had told her this was the day I'd die, and she'd chosen her outfit accordingly. The thought made my stomach turn. "Good morning, Mrs. Pierce," she purred, dragging out my title like it was temporary, like she was already planning what to call herself when she took my place. "Big day today, isn't it? The contract signing?" Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. She knew exactly what that contract meant. $50 million, the culmination of 6 years of work, my entire legacy in a single signature. And if Gavin's plan had worked, I'd be dead before I could sign it. The money would default to my estate, which meant Gavin would control it all, which meant Sasha would get her cut, her reward for sleeping with a married man and helping him plot murder. I smiled back, sweet as poison. "Yes, Sasha, very big day. You know how important this is to me." I let that hang there, watched her absorb it. Then I held up the glass, still half full of that green sludge. Actually, I'm glad you're here. Gavin made me this protein smoothie this morning. His special recipe, he said. But I'm so nervous about the contract signing, I can't finish it. You know how he is about his health drinks. He'd be so disappointed if I wasted it. Her eyes locked onto that glass like a hawk spotting prey. I saw the calculation happen in real time. Gavin made this. Gavin made this for Elena. Gavin's special recipe. The one he makes for the people he loves. And I could see her thinking, if I drink this, if I take this from Elena, it proves he loves me more. It proves I've won. Oh, this. She laughed, reaching for the glass before I'd even finished offering it, her fingers wrapped around it possessively. Gavin makes this for me all the time. It's kind of our thing, actually. She looked me dead in the eye when she said it, making sure I understood the implications. Our thing, intimate, exclusive. She wanted me to hurt. He's always so thoughtful, always taking care of me. Says I work too hard. She tilted the glass, examining the contents like she was appraising wine. He probably used the same recipe this morning out of habit. Poor thing, he's been so distracted lately. I bet he has, I thought. Distracted by gambling debts and murder plots and the logistical nightmare of killing your wife without getting caught? Well, I said softly, if it's your thing, you should have it. I'd hate to deprive you of something Gavin made with such care. I pushed the glass closer to her across the desk. Everything inside me was screaming to stop, to throw the glass away, to warn her. But Sasha wasn't innocent. She'd known Gavin was married. She'd flaunted the affair in my face for weeks. She'd worn that Cartier bracelet like a trophy. And if she knew about the murder plot, if she'd helped plan it, encouraged it, promised Gavin a future together once I was conveniently dead, then she deserved what was coming. Sasha lifted the glass in a mock toast, her red lips curving into a smirk. To Gavin's special recipes, she said. And then she drank. Not a sip, not a taste. She tilted her head back and drained that glass in 3 long swallows, her throat working, her eyes never leaving mine. It was a power move, a dominance display. She was telling me she'd already won, that Gavin was hers, that I was nothing but an obstacle soon to be removed. When she finished, she set the empty glass down with a sharp click. Delicious as always. He really does know what I like. She licked her lips. You should tell him thank you from me. For always thinking of me. I smiled. Oh, I will. I'm sure he'll be very interested to hear you enjoyed it. For the next 8 minutes, everything was normal. Sasha answered phones. I checked emails in my office. The world kept turning. And then I heard it. A soft gasp from the reception area. The sound of something hitting the floor. I walked out slowly, deliberately, my phone already in my hand, already recording. Sasha was standing behind her desk, one hand pressed to her stomach, her face pale and confused. I don't feel good, she whispered. Something's wrong. I feel... Her legs gave out. She hit the floor hard, her body convulsing, foam gathering at the corners of her mouth. Her eyes rolled back, showing whites, and she made this horrible, wet, choking sound, like she was drowning on dry land. It was exactly what Gavin had planned for me. Exactly how I would have looked if I'd been stupid enough to trust him. And that's when the elevator dinged, and Gavin stepped out into my office, looking like he'd run all 14 flights of stairs. The look on Gavin's face when he saw Sasha on the floor instead of me standing over my desk, that's an image I'll carry to my grave. Pure shock. His mouth fell open. His briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the marble floor with a crack. And for maybe 3 seconds, he just stood there frozen, like his brain couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. He was supposed to find me dead at home. That was the plan. He was supposed to walk into our kitchen around 9 a.m., discover my body slumped over the counter, call 911 in hysterics, play the devastated husband. But I'd gone to work. I'd thrown off his entire timeline, and now his mistress, his accomplice, his future, was dying on my office floor from the poison he'd made for me. Sasha! He lunged forward, dropping to his knees beside her seizing body, trying to turn her on her side. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip her shoulders. No, what happened? Sasha, stay with me, baby. Stay with me, baby. He called her baby right in front of me, not even pretending anymore. His voice cracked with genuine panic, and I realized he actually cared about her. Maybe not love, maybe just the idea of her, the fantasy of a new life with a younger woman and $50 million. But watching her die was breaking something inside him. I stood there, phone in hand, recording everything. My voice was steady, calm, clinical. She drank the smoothie you made me this morning. Gavin. The one you handed me with tears in your eyes. The one you begged me to finish. I watched his back stiffen, watched his head turn slowly toward me like a horror movie villain realizing the victim got away. She said it was your special recipe. Said you make it for her all the time. So I let her have it. After all, what kind of wife would I be if I kept something so thoughtful from the woman my husband really loves? His face cycled through emotions so fast I could barely track them. Confusion, understanding, horror, rage. "What did you do?" he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. "Oh my God, Elena, what did you do? You poisoned her! You poisoned her because you're jealous!" He was on his feet now, stumbling toward me, and I took a step back, keeping the phone between us like a shield. "You knew about us, and you couldn't handle it, so you... He gestured wildly at Sasha, whose convulsions were slowing down, her body going limp. "Call 911. Call them right now. She's dying." "Already done," I said quietly. And it was true. I'd called them the moment Sasha hit the floor, put the phone on speaker so the operator could hear everything. "They're on their way. Should be here in..." I checked my watch. 3 minutes, maybe less. Gavin's eyes darted to the elevator, to the emergency exit, calculating escape routes, but he couldn't run. Running meant abandoning Sasha, and abandoning Sasha meant admitting guilt. So he pivoted. I watched him make the decision in real time. The way his shoulders squared, the way his expression shifted from panic to righteous fury. He was going to flip the narrative. He was going to make me the villain. "You're insane," he breathed, backing away from me like I was dangerous. "You've always been unstable. The stress, the long hours, the paranoia. I told you to see someone, I begged you to get help, but you refused. And now look what you've done." His voice rose, performing for an invisible audience. "You found out about the affair, and you snapped. You poisoned my assistant because you couldn't stand that I'd found someone who actually cares about me. Someone who doesn't treat me like an accessory to her empire." It was a good speech, really. If I didn't know better, I might have believed him. He had that wounded husband energy down perfectly. The pain, the betrayal, the disbelief that his wife could do something so monstrous. But I'd seen him practice this kind of manipulation 100 times over the years. I'd watched him talk his way out of forgotten anniversaries, mysterious credit card charges, weekend business trips that never quite added up. Gavin's superpower was rewriting reality until everyone believed his version instead of the truth. The elevator dinged, paramedics rushed out, a flurry of Navy uniforms and medical equipment. They descended on Sasha, checking vitals, loading her onto a stretcher. Pulse is weak, respirations shallow, pupils fixed and dilated. One of them rattled off. "Possible overdose or toxic ingestion. We need to move now." They were gone in under 2 minutes, Sasha's limp body disappearing into the elevator, and suddenly the office felt too quiet, too empty except for me and Gavin and the horrible weight of what had just happened. That's when the police arrived. 2 detectives in cheap suits and tired eyes, the kind who'd seen every domestic nightmare the city had to offer and weren't impressed by wealth or corporate offices. The older one, a black woman with gray streaks in her hair and a no-bullshit expression, introduced herself as Detective Morrison. Her partner, a younger Latino man, was Detective Torres. They looked at the empty smoothie glass on Sasha's desk, still sitting there like evidence. They looked at Gavin, disheveled and wild-eyed. They looked at me, perfectly composed in my Armani suit. "Someone want to tell me what happened here?" Morrison asked. Gavin didn't hesitate. He pointed at me like I was a bomb about to detonate. "My wife poisoned my secretary. She found out about our affair, and she lost it. She gave Sasha something toxic, something that made her collapse. You need to arrest her right now before she hurts someone else." His voice was shaking with what sounded like genuine fear. "I know how this looks, detective. I know I'm not innocent here, but Elena is dangerous. She's been under tremendous stress with this business deal, and I think she finally cracked. Please, you have to take her in." Detective Morrison's eyes slid to me. "Mrs. Pierce, you want to respond to that?" I could feel it. The shift in the room, the way Torres's hand drifted toward his cuffs, the way Morrison was already assessing me as a threat. The evidence was damning. The glass had my fingerprints on it. I'd been the one to give it to Sasha. I'd been here when she collapsed, and I had motive. The scorned wife, the career woman pushed too far. It would be so easy for them to arrest me right now, to lock me up while Gavin walked free. It would be so easy for him to win. But I didn't panic. I didn't raise my voice. I simply pulled out my phone and held it up so both detectives could see the screen. "Detective Morrison, before you make any decisions, I need to show you something. I have video footage from my home security system, footage from this morning that I think you'll find very interesting." Gavin's face went white. Actually, white, like every drop of blood had drained straight to his feet. "What footage?" Detective Torres asked, stepping closer. I smiled. Not a kind smile, not a friendly smile. The smile of a woman who'd been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Footage of my husband preparing that smoothie. Footage of him crushing pills, digoxin, my mother's heart medication, and mixing them into the blender. Footage of him trying to murder me this morning before I closed the biggest deal of my career. The silence was deafening. Morrison and Torres exchanged a look, one of those wordless cop conversations that happens in the space between heartbeats. Then Morrison turned to Gavin. "Mr. Pierce, I think you should come with us to the station. We have some questions." "This is insane!" Gavin shouted, but his voice was cracking, breaking apart at the edges. "She's lying. She doctored those videos. She's framing me because of the affair. You can't seriously believe—" "Sir," Torres interrupted, his hand now definitely on his cuffs, "you can come voluntarily, or we can make this difficult. Your choice." I watched my husband's world collapse in real time. Watched him realize that I'd been 10 steps ahead, that every move he'd made had been anticipated, countered, turned against him. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw recognition flicker in his eyes. He'd underestimated me. He'd thought I was soft, trusting, too busy with work to notice what he was doing. He'd bet everything on my blindness. He'd bet wrong. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and desperation, and I loved every second of it. We were in interview room 3, me, Detective Morrison, Detective Torres, and my lawyer, Rebecca Stern, who I'd called the moment the cops arrived at my office. Rebecca was a shark in Chanel, 52 years old with a reputation for eviscerating prosecutors and a win rate that made defense attorneys weep. She'd represented me during a patent dispute 2 years ago, and I'd kept her on retainer ever since because women like me, women with money and power, we need protection. Not from criminals, from people who think they can take what we've built. "Let me be very clear," Rebecca said, her voice sharp enough to cut diamonds. "My client is the victim here. She is not under arrest. She is cooperating voluntarily. And if at any point this conversation shifts from witness testimony to interrogation, we walk. Understood?" Morrison nodded, but her eyes were still skeptical. She'd seen too many rich people lawyer up and walk away from crimes to take anything at face value. "Mrs. Pierce, walk me through this morning. Start from the beginning." I took a breath. This was it. This was where I either buried Gavin or he buried me. My husband brought me a smoothie at 7:15 a.m. Green, thick. He said it was for energy before my big contract signing. But the moment I smelled it, I knew something was wrong. It had a metallic scent, and there was white powder, undissolved, clinging to the rim of the glass. I pulled out my phone, opened the cloud storage app, and turned it toward Morrison. I'd installed security cameras in our home 3 weeks ago. I'll explain why in a moment, but this footage shows exactly what Gavin did this morning. I pressed play. The video was crystal clear, 1080p, timestamp in the corner reading 07:22 a.m. There was Gavin in our kitchen, wearing his gray pajamas, hair messy from sleep. He looked around nervously, checking to make sure he was alone, then opened the cabinet above the refrigerator. He pulled out a small plastic bag, white powder visible inside, and a vitamin capsule. His hands were shaking as he emptied the capsule and replaced the contents with the powder from the bag. Then he walked to the blender, added spinach, protein powder, almond milk, and that doctored capsule. He blended it for 30 seconds, poured it into a glass, and smiled. He fucking smiled. Torres leaned closer to the screen. Jesus, that's premeditation right there. Keep watching, I said softly. The video jumped forward to 07:15 a.m. Gavin walked into our bedroom where I was getting dressed, the glass in his hand. The audio was clear enough to hear every word. Babe, you need your strength today. Drink this, all of it. His voice was tight, strained, but trying so hard to sound normal. Then came the part where I took the glass, brought it to my lips, and turned away. You couldn't see me spit it into the napkin from this camera angle, but you could see me sealing something in a Ziploc bag and putting it in my purse. You could see me taking the glass with me when I left. Morrison paused the video. Why didn't you call the police right then? The moment you suspected he'd poisoned you. This was the dangerous question. The one that could make me look complicit, calculating, guilty. Rebecca touched my arm, a warning to be careful, but I'd already prepared for this. Because I wasn't 100% sure, I said, my voice steady. I knew Gavin was having an affair. I knew he'd been acting strange. But poisoning me, that felt impossible. This is my husband. The man I've loved for 9 years. I thought maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the stress was making me see things that weren't there. So I took the glass to work, thinking I'd have it tested privately. I didn't want to destroy my marriage over a suspicion. It was a good lie. Not too perfect, not too rehearsed. Just vulnerable enough to be believable. But then your secretary drank it, Torres said. She insisted. I replied. She said Gavin made that same smoothie for her all the time. She called it their thing. She drank it to prove a point, to prove he loved her more than me. I didn't force her. I didn't even encourage her. I just let her take it. Morrison's expression was unreadable. That's a hell of a coincidence, Mrs. Pierce. Your husband poisons a drink meant for you, and it ends up in his mistress instead. I know how it sounds, I said quietly. But I didn't know for certain it was poisoned until Sasha collapsed. Until that moment, I was still hoping I was wrong about everything. Rebecca cut in before Morrison could respond. Detectives, my client has provided you with video evidence of attempted murder. The question isn't whether Elena acted appropriately. The question is whether you're going to charge Gavin Pierce with attempted homicide, or if we need to go over your heads to the DA. Morrison stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide if I was a victim or a vigilante. Finally, she said, show me the rest of the footage. You said you installed cameras 3 weeks ago. Why? I'd been dreading this question, but there was no avoiding it now. Because I suspected Gavin was planning something, not murder. I didn't think it was that extreme. But I knew about the affair, and I knew he'd been acting erratic, so I checked his computer. I pulled up another file on my phone. This is from the public library in Brooklyn, 4 weeks ago. I followed him there and recorded his screen from across the room. The image was grainy but legible. Gavin sitting at a computer terminal, logged into a private browsing session. The search bar showed, undetectable poisons for heart attack. How long does digoxin stay in system? Can autopsy detect digoxin overdose? Life insurance payout after spouse death. Torres whistled low. That's premeditation. That's cold-blooded. There's more, I said. I opened another video file. This is from 3 nights ago. Our garage, 11:47 p.m. The footage showed Gavin in the garage, grinding pills with a mortar and pestle. My mother's pill bottle, orange with her name on it, sat on the workbench. He crushed 30 pills into fine powder and funneled them into a small plastic bag. He held the bag up to the light, examining it, then nodded to himself. Satisfied. The room was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Morrison and Torres exchanged another look. This one more definitive. They believed me. Finally, they believed me. Mrs. Pierce, Morrison said slowly, did you bring the napkin you spit the smoothie into? I reached into my purse and pulled out the Ziploc bag. The cloth napkin inside was stained green. I haven't touched it since this morning. My fingerprints are on the bag, obviously, but the napkin itself should have residue from whatever was in that drink. Torres took the bag like it was made of gold. We'll get this to the lab immediately. If there's digoxin in here, that corroborates your entire story. He looked at Morrison. We have enough to hold him, right? More than enough, Morrison agreed. She turned to me, and for the first time, her expression softened. Not much. She was still a cop, still suspicious by nature, but enough that I could see she understood what I'd been through. Mrs. Pierce, I want you to know, what you did was dangerous. Keeping evidence, not calling us immediately, letting that girl drink the poison, that could have gone very wrong, for you and for her. I know, I whispered, and I meant it. I'd been gambling with lives, mine, Sasha's, the truth, but I'd been desperate. When you're a woman and your husband tries to kill you, who do you call? The police, who might not believe you? A lawyer, who might tell you there's not enough evidence? Or do you take matters into your own hands and pray you're smart enough, fast enough, ruthless enough to survive? Rebecca stood, smoothing her skirt. Are we done here? My client needs to get to the hospital to check on the other victim. Morrison nodded. For now, but Mrs. Pierce, don't leave the city. We'll need you to testify when this goes to trial. Of course, I said. I'll be wherever you need me. As we walked out of the station, Rebecca grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. Elena, off the record, that was either the smartest thing you've ever done or the most reckless. I can't decide which. I looked back at the police station, at the building where my husband was sitting in an interrogation room right now, his entire life falling apart. Maybe both, I said. Maybe it's both. And deep down, under the relief and the exhaustion and the lingering terror, I felt something else, satisfaction, because Gavin had underestimated me one last time, and this time, it cost him everything. They put Gavin in interview room 1, the one with the mirror that's actually a window, the one where suspects think they're alone but they're really being watched by half a dozen cops taking notes and waiting for the confession. I wasn't supposed to be in the observation room. Technically, witnesses don't get to watch interrogations in real time, but Rebecca knew people, and Detective Morrison owed her a favor from a case 3 years ago, so there I was, standing behind that two-way mirror with a cup of terrible coffee in my hand, watching my husband squirm under fluorescent lights that made his skin look gray and sickly. He'd aged 10 years in the last 3 hours. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red and wild like a trapped animal realizing the cage has no exit. Detective Torres sat across from him, a manila folder thick with evidence spread between them. Morrison stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching. They'd let Gavin sit alone for 45 minutes before entering, a classic technique to let anxiety build, let the suspect's imagination run wild about what evidence they had, what witnesses had talked, what escape routes had already been closed. And it had worked. Gavin was practically vibrating with nervous energy when Torres finally walked in. Mr. Pierce, Torres said, his voice casual, almost friendly. Thanks for waiting. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? I want a lawyer, Gavin said immediately. His voice was hoarse, cracking. I know my rights. I'm not saying anything without representation. Torres nodded, unsurprised. That's your right, absolutely. But before we go down that road, I want to give you a chance to hear what we know. Because once you lawyer up, this conversation ends, and we move forward with what we have. And Mr. Pierce, what we have is not good for you. Gavin's jaw clenched. I could see him calculating. Should he stay silent, or should he hear them out? Curiosity won. It always did with Gavin. What do you think you know? Torres opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It was a still frame from my security footage. Gavin in the kitchen, grinding pills. We know you crushed 30 digoxin tablets on November 18th at 11:47 p.m. We know you stored the powder in a plastic bag in your garage. We know you mixed that powder into a smoothie this morning and gave it to your wife with the intention of killing her. Another photo, Gavin at the library computer. We know you researched undetectable poisons, autopsy procedures, and life insurance payouts. We know you have gambling debts totaling $370,000 to an underground bookie named Marcus the Shark Delgado, who, by the way, we've been surveilling for 2 years. He's very interested in talking to us about your arrangement. Gavin's face went from gray to white, pure, bloodless white. We also know, Torres continued, his voice still calm, still friendly, that you've been having an affair with Sasha Volkov for 7 months. We have hotel receipts, text messages, witnesses who saw you together. And here's the interesting part, Mr. Pierce. We have a recording from this morning where you called Miss Volkov baby while she was dying on the floor from the poison you made. That doesn't prove anything, Gavin said, but his voice was weak, desperate. I didn't poison her. Elena did. She found out about the affair and... Morrison stepped forward from the corner, her movement sharp and deliberate. Let me stop you right there. Elena has video footage of you making the smoothie. She has the napkin she spit the poison into, which our lab is testing right now. She has browser history from your library searches. And most importantly, Mr. Pierce, she has something you don't: credibility. She's a successful CEO with no criminal record and no motive to poison her own assistant. You, on the other hand, have 300,000 reasons to want your wife dead, plus a $10 million life insurance policy and a $50 million company you'd inherit if she died before signing the sale contract today. Gavin's hands were shaking on the table. You don't understand. I wasn't trying to kill her. I needed to slow her down, make her too sick to sign the contract. Just for a few days so I could figure out the debt situation. I wasn't trying to... He stopped. Too late. The confession was out, hanging in the air like smoke. Torres leaned back in his chair, satisfied. So, you did put something in the smoothie. Not poison, Gavin said quickly, desperately. Just something to make her sick. Maybe some expired supplements. I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. The pressure, the debts, I panicked. But I would never actually hurt Elena. I love her. Morrison laughed. Actually laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. Mr. Pierce, you crushed 30 digoxin tablets. The medical examiner estimates that dose would have caused cardiac arrest in a woman of your wife's size within 60 minutes. That's not making her sick. That's murder. I didn't know the dosage, Gavin whispered. I didn't know it was that much. I Googled it, and the site said it would cause symptoms. And I thought, you thought you'd kill your wife and inherit her fortune, Torres finished. But here's the problem. The smoothie didn't kill your wife. It killed your mistress. Gavin's head snapped up. Sasha's dead. The room went silent. I pressed closer to the glass, my heart pounding. Was she? Had she died at the hospital? Morrison and Torres exchanged a look, and I realized it was a bluff. They were testing him. Does it matter? Morrison asked softly. Does it change what you did? You made poison, Mr. Pierce. Someone drank it. Whether that someone was your wife or your mistress, you're responsible. Gavin put his head in his hands. Oh God, this isn't happening. I didn't mean for this to happen. None of this was supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen? Torres pressed. Walk me through the plan. Help me understand. And Gavin, weak, desperate, terrified Gavin, started talking. The debts were crushing me. Marcus was threatening to hurt Elena, to go after her company, and I couldn't let that happen. I thought if she was just too sick to work for a few days, maybe I could talk to Marcus, work out a payment plan, something. But then I realized, if Elena died, everything would be solved. The insurance, the company, all of it would come to me, and I could pay off Marcus and start over. I could be free. Free, Morrison repeated. With Sasha. Yes, Gavin whispered. With Sasha. She understood me. She didn't make me feel worthless like Elena did. Elena was always so focused on work, so driven, and I wanted to matter to someone. I wanted to be more than the guy who married rich. I felt bile rise in my throat, This was what he'd reduced our marriage to. Him feeling worthless, him needing attention, him wanting to matter. Not once did he mention love. Not once did he take responsibility for the choices that led him here. The gambling, the lying, the affair, the murder plot. It was all my fault for being too successful, too busy, too driven. Torres slid another photo across the table. This one was a screenshot of text messages between Gavin and Sasha. I recognized them. I'd seen them weeks ago when I'd cloned his phone. What about these? November 20th. Sasha texts you, "How much longer do I have to wait?" And you respond, "Soon, baby. Just a few more days and she'll be gone. Then it's you and me forever." Gavin stared at the messages like they were written in a foreign language. That was just talk. Just fantasy. We weren't actually going to... "She'll be gone," Morrison read aloud. That's pretty specific, Mr. Pierce. And then, 3 days later, you're grinding up heart medication. That's not fantasy. That's conspiracy to commit murder. Sasha didn't know, Gavin said quickly. She didn't know about the poison, I swear. She thought I was going to ask Elena for a divorce. That's all. She had no idea what I was planning. Torres glanced at Morrison, then back to Gavin. Interesting. Because Miss Volkov woke up about an hour ago. My breath caught. She was alive. Sasha was alive. Gavin's eyes went wide. She did? Is she okay? Can I see her? She's in ICU, but she's talking. And Mr. Pierce, she's telling us a very different story than you are. Torres leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. She says you told her about the poison. She says you promised her half the insurance money if she helped you make Elena's death look like a tragic accident. She says the whole thing was your idea, but she was your partner. No, Gavin breathed. No, that's not true. She's lying. She's trying to save herself by throwing me under the bus. Is she? Morrison asked. Or are you lying right now, trying to save yourself by blaming her? Gavin's face crumpled. He started crying. Real tears, ugly and desperate. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted the debt to go away. I just wanted to be happy. Is that so wrong? Behind the mirror, I felt nothing. No sympathy. No love. No residual affection for the man I'd married 9 years ago. That man was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. What sat in that interrogation room was a stranger, a weak, selfish stranger who'd tried to murder me for money and was now crying because he'd gotten caught. Torres stood up, collecting his folder. Gavin Pierce, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I turned and walked out of the observation room, out of the police station, into the cold November air that smelled like rain and city exhaust and freedom. Rebecca was waiting by her car, phone pressed to her ear, probably already calling in favors to make sure this case stayed airtight. When she saw me, she ended the call. Sasha's awake. Stable. She's cooperating with the DA in exchange for reduced charges. What's she saying? I asked. Rebecca's smile was sharp. That Gavin planned everything. That she knew about the affair, but not the murder plot. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter. She's burying him to save herself, and the DA is happy to have her testimony. I nodded slowly. Good. Let them destroy each other. They deserve it. Rebecca studied me for a moment, her expression unreadable. You know, Elena, a lot of women in your position would have died today. You survived because you were smarter, faster, and more ruthless than your husband. That's not luck. That's skill. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both, she said. Always both. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and broken dreams, and Sasha looked like hell. I wasn't supposed to be there. The nurses had strict orders, no visitors except immediate family and law enforcement. But I'd learned something important over the years. When you're worth $50 million, no visitors becomes perhaps just a few minutes, Mrs. Pierce. Money doesn't just open doors, it kicks them off their hinges. Sasha was propped up in the bed, IV lines snaking from her arms, a heart monitor beeping steadily beside her. Her face was pale, almost translucent, And her hair, that perfect hair she'd spent an hour styling this morning, was matted and dull. She looked small, fragile. Nothing like the confident woman who'd smirked at me across her desk 6 hours ago while drinking poison and calling it Gavin's special recipe. When she saw me standing in the doorway, her eyes went wide with fear. "What are you doing here?" I closed the door behind me, pulled up a chair, and sat down. "I wanted to see if you were going to live. Turns out, you are. Congratulations." Her hand moved to the call button by the bed, a panic reflex, but she didn't press it. Maybe she knew it wouldn't help. Maybe she was curious about what I'd say. Or maybe, deep down, she knew she deserved whatever was coming. "You tried to kill me," she whispered. Her voice was raspy, damaged from the intubation. "You gave me poison." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "No, Sasha. Gavin tried to kill me. I just redirected. You drank it because you wanted to prove you'd won. You drank it because your ego was more important than your survival instinct. And now here we are." She looked away, tears gathering in her eyes. Real tears, this time. Not the performative kind she'd used to manipulate men into giving her things. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear to God, I didn't know he was going to poison you. He told me he was leaving you. He said he loved me. He said we'd be together once the divorce went through." "And you believed him," I said softly. You believed a married man who was cheating on his wife would suddenly become honest and loyal to you. That's the funny thing about affairs, isn't it? The person who'll cheat with you will absolutely cheat on you. But I guess nobody ever thinks they're the exception until they're proven wrong. Sasha's jaw clenched. "You don't know what it's like. You have everything, the company, the money, the respect. Gavin felt invisible next to you. He needed someone who made him feel important." "So you fucked my husband to boost his ego," I said, my voice flat. "How noble of you." "I loved him," she said, but even she didn't sound convinced. "Or I thought I did. He was charming, attentive. He made me feel special." "He made you feel special with my money," I corrected. "That Cartier bracelet on your wrist? I paid for it. The hotel rooms, my credit card, the future he promised you? Built on my life insurance and the company I spent 6 years creating. You weren't in love with Gavin, Sasha. You were in love with the lifestyle you thought he could give you. Except he couldn't, because everything he had came from me, and I wasn't planning on dying." She turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw something like shame in her eyes. "The police said he was going to kill you. They said he planned it for weeks. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "The police also said you're cooperating," I said, "giving them everything they need to put Gavin away for 20 years. That was smart. Self-preservation over loyalty. I respect that, actually. It's what I would have done." Sasha's breathing quickened, her heart monitor beeping faster. "What do you want from me? Why are you really here?" I leaned forward, close enough that she could see every detail of my face. The exhaustion, the rage, the cold calculation that had kept me alive. "I want you to understand something, Sasha. You thought you were stealing my husband. You thought you were winning some kind of competition. But the truth is, you were just a tool, a disposable piece in Gavin's plan. He never loved you. He loved what you represented. Escape, freedom, a fresh start funded by my death, and the second things went wrong, he threw you away, just like he would have thrown me away, just like he'll throw away whoever's next." "There won't be a next," she whispered. "He's going to prison." "Exactly," I said. "And you're going to testify against him. You're going to stand in front of a judge and jury and tell them every detail of your affair, every promise he made, every lie he told. You're going to destroy him completely, because that's the deal you made to stay out of prison yourself." Sasha's face crumpled. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I just wanted to be loved." "Then you should have found a single man," I said. "But you didn't. You went after mine. And maybe you didn't know about the poison. Maybe you really were just a naive girl who believed a charming liar, but that doesn't make you innocent. You knew he was married. You knew I existed. And you decided I didn't matter." I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Your apology means nothing to me, Sasha, but your testimony, that matters. That's how you make this right, not by apologizing to me, but by making sure Gavin pays for what he tried to do. Can you do that? She nodded, wiping tears with the back of her hand. The DA said if I cooperate fully, I'll get immunity for everything except the affair. They can't charge me for sleeping with a married man, but they can charge me with conspiracy if they think I knew about the murder plot. So yes, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Good, I said. And because if you don't, if you suddenly develop amnesia or decide to protect him out of some misplaced sense of loyalty, I will make it my personal mission to ensure you never work in this city again. I will destroy your reputation, your career prospects, everything. Do you understand me? She nodded again, faster this time. I understand. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't hurt me. I almost laughed at that. Sasha, I already hurt you. You drank poison this morning because of me. But here's the thing. I didn't make you drink it. Your greed did. Your ego did. Your belief that you could take something that wasn't yours and get away with it. So no, I'm not going to hurt you anymore. You've already hurt yourself enough for both of us. I walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. When you testify, when you're sitting on that witness stand telling the world about your affair with my husband, remember this moment. Remember that you almost died because you trusted a man who was willing to murder his wife for money. And ask yourself if it was worth it. If the attention, the gifts, the fantasy of being someone's mistress, if all of that was worth ending up here, alone, betrayed, nearly dead. Sasha didn't answer. She just stared at me with hollow eyes, and I realized she already knew the answer. She'd known it the moment she woke up in this hospital bed and learned that Gavin had poisoned her by accident, that she'd never been anything more than collateral damage in his plan to kill me. I left her there, small and broken in that hospital bed, and I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just a cold, empty awareness that this was justice, imperfect, messy, but justice nonetheless. 3 days later, Sasha gave her full deposition to the DA. 8 pages of testimony detailing the affair, Gavin's financial troubles, his complaints about our marriage, his fantasies about a future without me. She swore she didn't know about the poison, that Gavin had told her he was planning to ask me for a divorce, that the texts about me being gone soon referred to a separation, not murder. Maybe it was true. Maybe it was a lie. The DA didn't care. They had enough to prosecute Gavin for attempted murder even without Sasha's involvement. But her testimony sealed it. It painted a picture of a desperate man willing to do anything to escape his debts and his marriage. A man who'd rather commit murder than admit failure. A man who'd groomed his mistress into believing she was special while simultaneously plotting to use her as cover for his crime. The media went insane, of course. Tech CEO's husband arrested for attempted murder. Poisoned smoothie, nearly kills, secretary instead of wife. Love triangle turns deadly in Manhattan. My face was on every news site, every tabloid. Reporters camped outside my office, my home, even my mother's doctor's appointments. They wanted the story, the drama, the betrayal, the revenge. But I didn't give interviews. I didn't release statements. I let my lawyer handle everything while I focused on what mattered, closing the deal. Because Gavin had tried to kill me to stop that contract from being signed. And the best revenge wasn't destroying him. The best revenge was succeeding anyway, proving that nothing he did could stop me from winning. So that's exactly what I did. The conference room on the 62nd floor had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked all of Manhattan, and I'd never felt more powerful in my entire life. 6 days had passed since Gavin tried to poison me. 6 days since Sasha nearly died. 6 days since my entire world had exploded into a media circus of attempted murder, affairs, and betrayal. But none of that mattered right now, because today, finally, impossibly, triumphantly, I was closing the deal. The buyers were already seated when I arrived. Marcus Chen, CEO of Tech Venture Global E, and his team of lawyers, accountants, and advisors. They'd flown in from San Francisco specifically for this signing, and I could see the uncertainty in their eyes when I walked in. They'd read the news. They knew what had happened. And they were wondering if I was stable enough, focused enough, strong enough to finish this. I was about to show them exactly how strong I was. Gentlemen, I said, setting my briefcase on the table and sitting down like I owned the room. Because I did. Thank you for your patience during this unprecedented week. I apologize for the delay. Marcus cleared his throat, uncomfortable. Mrs. Pierce, first let me say, we're all deeply sorry for what you've been through. If you need more time, if you want to postpone... I interrupted smoothly. I'm ready to sign today, unless you've changed your mind about the acquisition. No, he said quickly. We're still very interested in Pierce Tech Solutions. Your company is revolutionary. The AI algorithms alone are worth the investment. But we need to ensure the transition will be smooth, that the publicity won't damage the brand, that I'm not going to fall apart? I finished for him. That's what you're really asking. Can Elena Pierce handle running this company through a scandal? Can she maintain shareholder confidence? Can she keep her employees focused and productive while her personal life is dissected by every tabloid in America? Marcus shifted in his seat. Well, yes, essentially. I smiled. Not a warm smile. A smile that said I'd eaten men like him for breakfast and barely noticed the taste. Mr. Chen, let me tell you what I've learned this week. I've learned that the man I loved, the man I built a life with, was willing to murder me for money. I've learned that my own secretary was sleeping with my husband and celebrating my impending death. I've learned that when you're a successful woman, people will always assume you're too emotional, too fragile, too compromised to do your job. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. But here's what I've also learned. I'm smarter than my husband. I'm tougher than his mistress. And I'm more ruthless than anyone in this room gives me credit for. I survived a murder attempt through preparation, intelligence, and sheer will. So yes, Mr. Chen, I can handle a business transition. I can handle media scrutiny. I can handle anything you throw at me because I've already survived the worst thing imaginable. The room was silent. Marcus glanced at his lawyers, who glanced at each other, and I could see the calculation happening. Finally, Marcus nodded. You're right. I apologize for questioning your capability. Let's proceed. Rebecca, sitting beside me, slid the contract across the table. It was 300 pages of legal language, valuations, terms, and conditions that we'd been negotiating for 8 months. $50 million for Pierce Tech Solutions, the company I'd built from scratch in a studio apartment 7 years ago, with nothing but a laptop and a dream. The company I'd poured every ounce of my intelligence, creativity, and determination into. The company Gavin had tried to steal by killing me. I picked up the pen, a Mont Blanc, heavy and expensive, the one I'd bought myself when we closed our first $1 million client. Gavin had told me it was too flashy, that I should tone down on my success, so I didn't make other people uncomfortable. I'd ignored him then. I was ignoring him now. I signed my name on the first page, then the second, then the third. Each signature felt like a small victory, a middle finger to everyone who'd tried to stop me, hurt me, undermine me. When I reached the final page, the one that made the sale official, that transferred ownership and deposited $50 million into my account, I paused. For just a moment, I thought about Gavin. I thought about him sitting in a jail cell right now, probably talking to his public defender because he couldn't afford a real lawyer anymore, probably realizing that every single thing he'd planned had backfired spectacularly. He'd wanted my money. He'd wanted my company. He'd wanted me dead. Instead, he got a prison sentence, public humiliation, and the knowledge that I'd won, that I'd always been going to win because I was better than him in every possible way. I signed the final page with a flourish. Congratulations, Mrs. Pierce, Marcus said, standing to shake my hand. Or should I say, congratulations, Ms. Pierce. I understand you're filing for divorce. Already filed, I confirmed. The marriage is over. Has been for a while, actually. I just didn't realize it until my husband tried to murder me. One of Marcus's lawyers, a young woman with sharp eyes and a sharper suit, spoke up. Ms. Pierce, I have to say, watching you close this deal after everything you've been through, that's the most badass thing I've ever seen. I smiled at her, a real smile this time. Thank you. But honestly, this was the easy part. The hard part was deciding not to drink the poison. Everything after that was just cleanup. We spent another hour going over transition details, timelines, employee retention, branding strategies. Marcus wanted me to stay on as CEO for the first year to ensure continuity, and I agreed. Not because I needed the job, but because I loved this company. It was mine, my creation, my legacy, and I'd be damned if I let anyone, Gavin, Sasha, the media, anyone, take it away from me. When the meeting finally ended, I walked out of that conference room with my head high and my bank account $50 million heavier. Rebecca walked beside me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "You know," she said quietly, "most people would take a vacation after a week like this. Maybe go to Bali, drink cocktails on a beach, process the trauma." "I'll process later," I said. "Right now, I have work to do." "Work," Rebecca repeated, amused. "Elena, you just made $50 million. You could retire tomorrow and live like royalty for the rest of your life. What work could possibly be more important than taking care of yourself?" I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Gavin's trial starts in 3 months. I need to prepare my testimony. I need to make sure every piece of evidence is airtight, every witness is prepped, every possible defense strategy is anticipated and countered. I need to ensure he goes to prison for 20 years minimum. That's the work I'm talking about." Rebecca studied me for a long moment. "You're not going to let this go, are you? You're going to see this through to the absolute end." "He tried to kill me, Rebecca," I said softly. "He crushed pills. He searched for poisons. He made a smoothie specifically designed to stop my heart. And the only reason I'm standing here right now is because I was paranoid enough to install cameras and smart enough to refuse to drink it. So, no, I'm not letting this go. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what Gavin Pierce is, a murderer who failed." "And Sasha?" Rebecca asked. "What about her?" "Sasha is collateral damage," I said. "She'll testify, she'll walk away with reduced charges, and she'll spend the rest of her life knowing she almost died because she trusted the wrong man. That's punishment enough." We continued walking, out of the building and into the bright November afternoon. The air was cold and crisp, and the city hummed with energy, cars honking, people rushing to their next meeting, street vendors selling hot dogs and pretzels. Normal life. The world had kept spinning while mine fell apart and reassembled itself into something harder, sharper, more dangerous. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "I saw the news. Are you okay, sweetheart?" I typed back, "I'm more than okay, Mom. I just closed the deal. 50 million, it's done." Her response came immediately. "I'm so proud of you. Your father would be too." My father had died when I was 19, a heart attack, sudden and cruel. He'd been a software engineer, brilliant but never successful, always one break away from making it big. I'd built Pierce Tech partially in his memory, to prove that our family could create something lasting, something important. And now I had, despite Gavin, despite everything, I looked up at the skyline, at the buildings scraping the sky, at the city that had tried to chew me up and spit me out but had failed. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. "I survived. And I won." Rebecca's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then handed it to me. "It's Detective Morrison. She wants to talk to you." I took the phone. "Detective? Ms. Pierce?" Morrison's voice was professional but tinged with satisfaction. "I wanted to let you know. The DA officially charged Gavin with attempted murder in the first degree, criminal conspiracy, and insurance fraud. His bail was denied. He's not getting out until trial." "Good," I said. "What about Sasha?" "She's cooperating fully. We're charging her with obstruction of justice for not reporting Gavin's threats against you. But in exchange for her testimony, she'll likely get probation and community service. No jail time." Part of me wanted to argue, to demand that Sasha face harsher consequences. But the logical part, the part that had kept me alive, knew that Sasha's testimony was more valuable than her punishment. "That's acceptable," I said. "One more thing," Morrison added. "The lab results came back on the napkin you gave us. Digoxin levels were off the charts. If you'd swallowed that smoothie, You'd have been dead within an hour. Probably less. My hand tightened on the phone. Thank you for telling me, Ms. Pierce, Morrison said, her voice softer now. I've been a detective for 23 years. I've seen a lot of attempted murders. Most of them succeed because the victim doesn't see it coming. You saw it coming. You prepared. You survived. That takes serious courage. Or serious paranoia, I said. Sometimes they're the same thing, Morrison replied. Take care of yourself. I hung up and handed Rebecca her phone back. We stood there on the sidewalk, two women in expensive suits who'd spent their lives fighting to be taken seriously in a world that constantly underestimated them. You hungry? Rebecca asked. We should celebrate. Champagne, caviar, the works. I thought about it. Thought about celebrating with expensive food and alcohol, about pretending this was a normal business victory instead of a survival story, but I wasn't in the mood for pretending. Rain check, I said. I need to go home. See my mother. Make sure she's okay. She's been through a lot, too. Finding out her son-in-law tried to kill her daughter using her own medication. Rebecca nodded. Give her my best. And Elena, seriously, take a vacation? Even if it's just a weekend? You've earned it. Maybe, I said. But we both knew I wouldn't, because there was still work to do, a trial to prepare for, a company to run, a life to rebuild from the ashes of my marriage. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. You think you won, but this isn't over. You destroyed my life. I'll destroy yours. Gavin, using someone else's phone from jail because his had been confiscated. I smiled and deleted the message without responding, because that's what bullies do when they lose. They threaten, they bluster, they try to make you afraid, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd stared death in the face and won. What could Gavin possibly do to me from behind bars? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that, more than the $50 million or the successful company or the upcoming divorce, was the real victory. I'd taken back my power, and I was never giving it away again. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom and watched my husband get sentenced to 22 years in prison. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and no patience for bullshit, read the verdict with the kind of cold precision that made my heart sing. Mr. Pierce, you have been found guilty of attempted murder in the first degree, criminal conspiracy, and insurance fraud. The evidence against you was overwhelming. The premeditation was clear. You researched poisons, you acquired the means, and you attempted to execute a plan that would have resulted in your wife's death had she not been observant enough to detect your crime. She paused, looking down at Gavin over her reading glasses. The court finds no mitigating factors. You acted out of greed, selfishness, and a complete disregard for human life. I hereby sentence you to 22 years in a maximum security facility, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Gavin didn't cry, didn't protest. He just sat there, shoulders slumped, looking like a man who'd finally run out of lies to tell. His public defender, overworked and underpaid, packed up his briefcase without a word. There was nothing left to say. The evidence had been damning, the videos, the search history, Sasha's testimony, the digoxin in the napkin, the gambling debts. Every piece of my carefully constructed case had landed exactly as I'd planned. When they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. Not with love, not with regret, with hatred. Pure, undiluted hatred because I'd survived, because I'd outsmarted him, because I'd taken everything he wanted and made it mine forever. I held his gaze and smiled. Not smugly, not cruelly, just satisfied. The way you feel when you finish a difficult project and realize it turned out even better than you'd hoped. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like locusts, shouting questions about how I felt, whether I'd forgiven him, what I planned to do next. I ignored them all and climbed into the town car where Rebecca was waiting. How does it feel? She asked as we pulled away from the curb. Like closure, I said simply, like the end of a very long, very dark chapter. And the beginning of what? I looked out the window at the city rushing past. My city, the place where I'd almost died and somehow came out stronger. The beginning of whatever I want, I said. That's the beauty of surviving something like this. You realize you're not afraid anymore. Of anything. Rebecca smiled. Spoken like a woman who just got $50 million and her life back. 50 million and change, I corrected. Don't forget about the book deal. Oh yes, the book deal. Because of course this story was too good not to tell. A major publishing house had offered me 7 figures for the rights to my story. From Poison to Power, How I Survived My Husband's Murder Plot and Built an Empire. It would be a bestseller, the publisher promised, a cautionary tale, an inspiration, a middle finger to every man who thought he could destroy a woman and get away with it. I'd already started writing it. My mother was waiting when I got home, sitting in the living room with tea and that knowing smile she always wore when she was proud of me, but trying not to gloat. How'd it go? She asked. 22 years, I said, dropping my purse on the counter and collapsing onto the couch beside her. He'll be 70 before he gets out. Good, she said simply. He tried to use my medication to kill my daughter. He deserves every second of that sentence. She patted my hand, her fingers warm and steady. Your father would be so proud of you, sweetheart. The way you handled all of this. The intelligence, the courage, the refusal to be a victim. That's the woman we raised. I leaned my head on her shoulder, suddenly exhausted. I just wanted to build a company, Mom. I just wanted to be successful and happy. How did it turn into this? Because some people can't stand to see others succeed, she said softly. Especially women who don't need them. Gavin needed you to be small so he could feel big. When you refused to shrink, he decided to eliminate you instead, but he underestimated you. They always do. She was right. They always did. That night, alone in my bedroom, the same bedroom where Gavin had brought me poison smoothies and kissed my forehead and whispered lies about forever, I sat by the window and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. The city glittered like diamonds, endless and indifferent, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. I'd survived. More than that, I'd won. The company was mine. The money was mine. My life was mine again. And Gavin was exactly where he belonged, locked away where he could never hurt anyone again. I thought about all the women who hadn't been as lucky, the ones who trusted too much, who ignored their instincts, who drank the poison because they couldn't imagine the person they loved would actually try to kill them. I'd come so close to being one of them. One moment of weakness, 1 second of blind trust, and I'd be dead. But I wasn't dead. I was here, and I was never going to let anyone make me feel powerless again. As I closed the curtains and turned off the lights, I whispered into the darkness, "Trust your instincts. If the love tastes bitter, spit it out. And if you can, let the competition taste the poison instead." Because that's what I'd learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just letting someone's own greed destroy them while you walk away untouched. I got rid of my toxic husband, but the next story is about a wife who was discarded like trash by her husband's family after 20 years of dedication. Imagine arriving at your Palm Beach mansion and finding your bags on the sidewalk. Your mother-in-law and your husband tell you you're too old for the family image and they've replaced you with a 23-year-old model. They kick you out with nothing. But they forgot one detail. The family fortune doesn't exist anymore. You've been supporting it for 10 years. What happens when you make one call and shut off the tap? Watch the financial curse unfold in 24 hours.